So like it starts this way, right? So this is how it's differentiated from the Old Babylonian, right? The Old Babylonian has a different starting line, and the standard edition begins, "He who saw the deep, the country's foundation, who knew the proper ways, was wise in all matters. Gilgamesh, who saw the deep, the country's foundation, who knew the proper ways, was wise in all matters. He explored everywhere the seats of power. He knew of everything the sum of wisdom. He saw what was secret, discovered what was hidden. He brought back a tale of before the deluge," right? So there is a flood myth, right, in Gilgamesh, and in Sumerian religion in general that we're going to get to, which is almost identical actually to the biblical flood myth. This is kind of how it starts, right? It's about a page and a half of really kind of praising Gilgamesh, right? And we have like phrasing like, surpassing all other kings, heroic of stature, brave scion of Uruk, wild bull on the rampage. It starts to then like get into these characterizations that are, a little more kind of like, it made me wonder, like I put this in the notes, like what is the difference between our interpretation of goodness versus greatness compared to maybe how the ancients saw it, compared to how Nietzsche saw it. Like Nietzsche had a much more kind of, a Greek view of a phrase like terrible, right? Or a Greek view of a phrase like greatness. Like even something like, in history, like Ivan the Terrible, right? It's not necessarily even that he's just bad, right? Terrible has this kind of aspect of dread to it, of greatness to it, and it's these phrases that are they're a lot more innocuous now, right? And Nietzsche would interpret greatness in a different way, right? It would be very much distinct from personal goodness, like a wild bull on the rampage, and it's not simply that he's like defeating the enemies of Uruk. He's also, in the end, like we learned that he's oppressing his own people. And just kind of really unexpectedly, you suddenly get this stanza, right, after like a page and a half of praise. "The young men of Uruk he harries without warrant. Gilgamesh lets no son go free to his father. By day and by night his tyranny grows harsher. Gilgamesh, the guide of the teeming people." So here, it's like an objective statement, right? He's still a guide, right, of these people, but he's a guide in the context of also being a tyrant, right? So I guess the first thing I would ask is like, I mean, like, did you have any responses to like that aspect of it? Just the fact that this like notion of greatness, it's so, it's very different from like the average person today, how they would interpret such a thing.
Yeah, so I did, and it is striking to get that immediate juxtaposition. Just briefly in my translation with the turning phrases where we do get some characterization of him as a tyrant. It says, "There was no withstanding the aura or power of the wild ox, Gilgamesh, neither the father's son nor the wife of the noble, neither the mother's daughter nor the warrior's bride was safe. The old men said, 'Is this the shepherd of the people? Is this the wise shepherd, protector of the people?'" So it is striking from that standpoint to hear all these great things and this epic characterization of him, but then immediately have some people questioning whether he's really the best one to have at the helm here. And I guess when I was first going through and reading it, part of what struck me was, he is characterized as 2/3 God, 1/3 man. So some of these acts that he's engaging in and the way that he's ruling is pretty similar to a lot of ancient gods and mythological gods, right? Where they are a terror, and at their whim, they'll just bring destruction and sadness upon lowly humans. So he seems to have like this 1/3 human aspect of himself where, he does have some measure of wisdom, and he's obviously the one out there doing the building and the envisioning of what Uruk could be. And on the one hand, the way that the text sets it up, it seems like the people are grateful for that, right? To have this great king who's doing great acts, and they want to follow him for that reason. But then at the same time, when he turns around and abuses that power, they're troubled by it. So Yeah, I definitely, you get the immediate build of him as someone that you're intrigued by to see how his character develops, because he does seem great, and he's characterized as great in that Nietzschean sense. But you wonder what's going to become of him going forward.
It's actually a little bit like your translation is a little bit different. You have the people wondering, like, is this the person that's supposed to be our king? And in this translation, it says, just as a declarative without any quotation marks, it is he who is shepherd of Uruk the sheepfold, but Gilgamesh lets no daughter go free to her mother. He is their herdsman, they are the cows, their complaint carried up to furthest heaven, right? So here you just have this kind of declarative that this is in fact the case, whereas in your translation, it's kind of like people are questioning this, right? You know, it makes me wonder, is this just like what exactly would the original say in that regard? And also, like, the accomplishments, right, that he's sort of being praised for, it makes me wonder, did they already like come about, right? Because if ultimately he concludes that immortality is about doing great things, like, is that the thing that spurs him to, you know, like a newfound kind of greatness, you know, by that definition? Or, you know, has he simply been a kind of more, you know, traditional, like, not very good king that sort of did kind of like maybe like some bare minimum thus far, right? Because it seems like so far people, you know, they fear him more than they respect him. And if there's not so much respect yet, you know, perhaps what he is truly known for is not yet, like, at this point, the text, right? It has this kind of interesting set of techniques where, you know, in terms of the plot, like, you're sort of starting from the end, right? Because now you already have the wisdom, you already have, you know, the objective praise and the objective respect, and we have this like immediate transition to here are Gilgamesh's flaws, and so that's like a signal that, okay, now we're in the present time. Now we're starting the text with Gilgamesh at the beginning before he ever meets Enkidu, right? So
it is. And one other thing I would highlight, because we're about to talk about the creation of Enkidu by the gods, is the parallels are many with the Bible or with other ancient texts, but we'll probably spend a little bit more time talking about the Bible today with some of our other examples. And you in your notes highlighted the Ecclesiastes nature, which of course we have that episode on Ecclesiastes from a while back, where it is this search for meaning, this search for permanence, and can I accomplish that via works? Gilgamesh seems to think so, and yet it's just interesting that we get these first few pages of a setup where he's here, he's the king, 2/3 God, 1/3 man. He's been doing what he's doing. And then the gods decide to create Enkidu to challenge him for whatever set of reasons, right? Maybe we'll talk about that. But it's just interesting to me because the Bible, straight from the get-go, is there's nothing before God. In the beginning was God, and he creates Adam and then subsequently Eve. And so even though there are certainly parallels, and it's talked about quite a bit in some of the literature on this, where the creation of Enkidu is kind of a precursor to the biblical creation of Adam. It's still pretty different because the set of reasons is so different. I mean, we need someone to challenge this other person who already exists and has been going about ruling for some time. So to me, I mean, I get the parallels, but that's, as I was holding that in my head and reading through this, I was like, yeah, but this is so different, and in a way modern, that there's some sort of rationale for the creation of Enkidu to challenge this other man who's kind of getting out of hand. So